안녕하십니까, 박훈탁TV입니다. 오늘은 며칠 전에 공개된 J6 1월 6일 동영상과 이에 대한 민주당의 이상한 반응을 보여드리겠습니다. 이 동영상에서 트럼프 지지자들이 경찰을 살해했다는 주장은 조작임이 확인되었습니다. 경찰의 끈앞을 레이 앱스가 시위를 선동한 사실도 확인되었습니다. 그 유명한 제이콥 찬슬리가 죄가 없다는 사실도 확인되었습니다. 방송 전에 한 말씀 드리겠습니다. 여러분들 잘 아시다시피 제가 해임 취소 행정소송 진행하고 있습니다. 광주가 제기한 터무니없는 손해배상 청구 소송도 준비하고 있습니다. 제가 굉장히 어렵습니다. 여기 후원 계좌 있습니다. 자율구독료 내는 셈 치고 좀 도와주시기를 간곡하게 부탁드리겠습니다. 팍스뉴스의 터커 컬슨이 J6 동영상을 공개했는데 2021년 1월 6일 DC 의사당에서 발생한 폭력 난동 사태에 대한 공화당 매코넬 상원의원의 주장과는 완전히 상반되는 내용입니다. 라이너 매코넬 상원의원의 말을 들어보시겠습니다.
My view of what happened January the 6th, we're here. We saw what happened. It was a violent insurrection for the purpose of trying to prevent the peaceful transfer of power after a legitimately certified election from one administration to the next. That's what it was.
민주당이 지배한 1월 6일 위원회가 J6 동영상을 대중에 공개하는 것을 거부한 이유가 드러났습니다. 민주당이 1월 6일의 책임을 공화당과 전국의 트럼프 지지자들에게 전가한 가장 강력하고 유일무이한 이유가 완전 거짓으로 드러났습니다.
Deadly insurrection.
Incited a deadly insurrection.
A violent, deadly insurrection on the Capitol 9 months ago. It was about white supremacy, in my view.
A deadly insurrection. Everything about that phrase is a lie. Very little about January 6th was organized or violent. Surveillance video from inside the Capitol shows mostly peaceful chaos. But the slogan worked. The term deadly carries enormous emotional power, which is why they used it. To prove the insurrection was deadly, propagandists pointed to the death of an officer called Brian Sicknick. The mob killed Officer Brian Sicknick. That's what they said. It was their single most powerful indictment of the January 6th protesters and of Donald Trump and of Republican voters nationally. They repeated that claim for years. They are still repeating it. At first they told the country that Officer Sicknick was murdered with a fire extinguisher.
Officer Brian Sicknick died after being hit in the head with a fire extinguisher during the fight.
That story came from the New York Times, which is effectively the assignment editor for most of the rest of American media. It was a lie, untrue in any way. But only after that lie had hardened into conventional wisdom did the newspaper bother to retract it.
The New York Times has quietly retracted its story about the death of Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick.
The damage had been done. Brian Sicknick, himself a Trump voter, had been transformed without his consent into a political martyr of the left. His memory was shamelessly exploited by the incoming Biden administration. In February of 2021, Sicknick's body lay in state in the Capitol Rotunda, where a parade of unscrupulous politicians made use of it. Here's Joe Biden.
Breaking down the doors, trying to overturn an outcome of the election, and killing several police officers in the meantime.
But the video we reviewed proves that is a lie. Here is surveillance footage of Sicknick walking in the Capitol after he was supposedly murdered by the mob outside. By all appearances, Sicknick is healthy and vigorous. He's wearing a helmet, so it's hard to imagine he was killed by a head injury. Whatever happened to Brian Sicknick was very obviously not the result of violence he suffered at the entrance to the Capitol. This tape overturns the single most powerful and politically useful lie the Democrats have told us about January 6th. And it was indeed a lie. The January 6th committee knew perfectly well that Brian Sicknick was walking normally through the Capitol after he was supposedly murdered by Trump supporters. And they know that because they saw this tape. We can be sure because the footage contains an electronic bookmark that is still archived in the Capitol's computer system. That means that investigators working for the Democratic Party reviewed this tape. They saw it, but they refused to release the tape to the public.
연방정부의 정보기관과 의사당 경찰관이 1월 6일 난동을 선동했다는 의혹이 확인되고 있습니다. 레이 앱스라는 자가 1월 6일에 의사당 난동을 선동하는 장면과 그의 거짓말이 드러났는데도 불구하고 민주당이 그를 보호하고 있습니다.
One of the enduring mysteries of January 6th is the role that intelligence and law enforcement agencies played in the events of that day. We know there was some number of undercover federal agents in the crowd at the Capitol. Officials have since admitted that under oath. But what exactly were they doing there? The January 6th committee worked hard to hide the answer to that question. We do know from contemporaneous videotape that a mysterious figure called Ray Epps encouraged the crowd to go into the Capitol. For some reason, Epps has never been indicted for that. But there's no question he did it.
We need to go into the Capitol!
Under public pressure, the January 6th committee finally interviewed Ray Epps. Epps told the committee that he never entered the Capitol and therefore never committed a crime. His text messages showed that at 2:12 p.m., he boasted to his nephew that he had, quote, orchestrated the protests at the Capitol. He admitted he helped get people there. Yet, curiously, congressional Democrats consider Ray Epps an ally, not an insurrectionist. Tonight we can tell you that at the very least, Ray Epps lied in his sworn testimony to the January 6th committee. Epps testified that when he sent the text messages to his nephew, he had already left the Capitol grounds to return to his hotel room. That is not true. The surveillance footage we found shows that, in fact, Ray Epps remained at the Capitol for at least another half an hour. You're seeing that on your screen now. What was Epps doing there? We can't say, but we do know that he lied to investigators. The January 6th committee likely knew this too. Democrats had access to the same tape, yet they defended Ray Epps. No honest investigation would do that.
1월 6일 의사당 난동에서 가장 유명한 인사는 누구보다도 제이콥 챈슬리일 것입니다. 그는 의사당 난동으로 4년에 가까운 실형을 받고 복역 중인데 J6 동영상에서 그의 범죄 행위가 전혀 드러나지 않았습니다.
Jacob Chansley became the face of January 6th, a dangerous conspiracy theorist dressed in outlandish costume who led the violent insurrection to overthrow American democracy. For these crimes, Chansley was sentenced to nearly 4 years in prison, far more time than many violent criminals now receive. What did Jacob Chansley do to receive this punishment? But according to our review of the internal surveillance video, it is very clear what happened once he got inside. Virtually every moment of his time inside the Capitol was caught on tape. The tapes show that Capitol Police never stopped Jacob Chansley. They helped him. They acted as his tour guides. Here's video of Chansley in the Senate chamber. Capitol Police officers take him to multiple entrances and even try to open locked doors for him. We counted at least 9 officers who were within touching distance of unarmed Jacob Chansley. Not one of them even tried to slow him down. Chansley understood that Capitol Police were his allies. Video shows him giving thanks for them in a prayer on the floor of the Senate. Watch. Contrast the reality of what Jacob Chansley did in the Capitol building on January 6th, the indisputable facts recorded on video, some of which has never before been seen, with the depiction of Jacob Chansley that you've seen in the media for more than 2 years. He's a terrorist, they said. He should be killed.
Shoot him! Shoot him! Like, if you burst into the United States, if he was dressed like Bin Laden, would you have shot him?
Shoot him! Shoot him! It makes you wonder, who are the violent extremists here? Not Jacob Chansley, and the video proves that. But you would never have known from the media coverage.
The people sitting in the chairs need to be sitting in a jail cell.
Chansley is in a jail cell. He's been there for months. If he was in fact committing such a grave crime, why didn't the officers who were standing right next to him place him under arrest?
트럼프는 J6 동영상을 환영했고 2차 공개에 대한 기대를 피력했으나 민주당의 상원의원 척 슈머는 터커 칼슨이 동영상을 조작했다면서 2차 공개를 반대했습니다. 그런데 그는 브라이언 스트크닉에 대해서는 전혀 언급하지 않았습니다.
Millions of Americans tuned in to one of the most shameful hours we have ever seen on cable television. with contempt for the facts, disregard of the risks, and knowing full well he was lying to his audience. Fox News host Tucker Carlson ran a lengthy segment last night arguing the January 6th Capitol attack was not a violent insurrection. By diving deep into the waters of conspiracy and cherry-picking from thousands of hours of security footage, Mr. Carlson told the bold-faced lie that the Capitol attack, which we all saw with our own eyes, was somehow not an attack at all. He tried to argue it was nothing more than a peaceful sightseeing tour.
오늘 방송은 여기까지입니다. 감사합니다.